All right. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, or like I always say, wherever you're located, whatever time zone. So I'm always excited. I mean, I probably need to come up with a new kind of keyword, but I'm excited about this one because this is somebody that, we talked to Stan Arthur from I Love St. Pete in our last episode about him giving back to the community. And, here's another individual that I don't think could kind of, be a part of giving back to a community more than Mike Sutton in front of me right now. So CEO of Habitat for Humanity and also the Restore stores as well, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Amazing. So long resume. I can only imagine as CEO and president of Habitat. I know you were involved with Big Brothers and Big Sisters at one point.
Yeah. I came from Big Brothers Big Sisters, but been with Habitat for over 12 years now between two different organizations. So
Amazing. So we'll kind of just kick it off. I'm your host, Kevin Sullivan of the Chronicles Chat. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us. So, Mike, without further ado, tell us a little bit about yourself and, kind of where your background came from.
Yeah, well, Kevin, thanks for having me on, and congrats on your podcast. I think it's awesome that you kind of share information out into the community and all that good stuff. So, and really proud of the work that you're doing. So we're obviously fraternity brothers, right? We didn't go to school together or anything, but we're connected through the same college fraternity. So it's always cool how something like that brings people together.
And just to kind of touch on that, it's amazing that, not being a part of that organization. I mean, it being in similar communities, would we have come across each other? Yeah, probably. But that bond that we share, that it's like, oh yeah, you have the same values that I do. So definitely, fraternities, obviously there's a little bit of controversy behind that, but in this case, it definitely is a great thing for networking and meeting great people. So
yeah, definitely. So so your question about just kind of about me, I guess. So I grew up in the Tampa Bay area, North Tampa, and went to Gaither High School. My parents split my senior year, and which kind of I used to always say it forced me to stay home for college or stay local, but at the end of the day, it was probably the best thing that could happen for me. So I attended the University of South Florida. And am a proud first generation college grad. So that's something I'm really proud of. And to get through college for someone like me was tough. I'm not good at studying. I'm not good at taking tests and all that kind of stuff. So I feel very blessed that I was able to get through college, even though it took me a little bit longer than I did a couple victory laps, I guess. But college was fun. College was fun from a social aspect, but college was also a time in my life where I learned so much. And, we touched on the fraternity, but I was a part of starting our college fraternity at USF. So that was a pretty amazing experience. I kind of liken it to starting a business. I mean, we had to get incorporated. We had to recruit members. We had to recruit alumni to help support the organization. We had to work with university officials and our fraternity national headquarters to kind of get things going and to move things along. But that was probably one of the highlights of my college experience was kind of starting the fraternity and getting that underway at USF.
And do you think those early experiences really helped you or kind of showed you what you were capable of later on in life?
Probably. I never saw myself as a leader until I was put into that spot. I was never, president of a club in high school, or I was never the captain of a sports team or anything like that. So I tend to, up until that point in my life, I tend to just I wanted to fall into just like in the middle of a pack, right? And not necessarily stand out in any way. I had gone through, when I first got to USF, I went through the pledge process of another fraternity and was hazed pretty significantly, which is kind of why I walked away. And it fits into that stigma of, fraternity life, right? And I kind of backed away thinking like, what am I doing? Like, why am I putting myself in this? And right around that same time was when I connected with someone from Tau Kappa Epsilon, Teak, our fraternity, and they were starting a new chapter at USF, and I was able to, get a couple other guys that went through the same similar situation as I did, just kind of being mistreated, so to speak, by these people that you thought were friends. And we had the opportunity to kind of start a fraternity that was based on leadership, and networking, and being true representation of the college, as opposed to just a group of partying guys. Now, we had fun, but at the same time, I think that we set ourselves out on how do we use this as a way to maybe set ourselves up for a career and make lifelong connections. And I think we were really successful at that.
And I think so, just to stop you right there, because this is, a really great point here that, I kind of want to flesh out, is that, I think it's a good reminder for the audience, because a lot of what we do here is motivational, success-based, business-based. And even at, a young age, you learned early on that just because one opportunity didn't work out in a particular field, I guess you could say, doesn't mean that, for lack of better terms, you should throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe there's a better route or a better way to go about things, to improve some type of system, organization, business structure, or even in your years with, a club or a fraternity or something like that. So I think that's important to really point out, because a lot of people, when it gets hard, and I'm sure other people that could identify with this, is that they had a bad experience, so they just put that away on the shelf and move on to the next one, when it sounds like, and obviously you can confer that you had a pretty amazing fraternal experience or organizational experience after the fact, making it better yourself.
Yeah, well, I think I was able to take the situation that I went through, which was, what I look at as a horrible one, and ensure that there was options for people that didn't want that lifestyle or that type of interaction. So, helping to roll out an organization that stood for morals and values and was respected, I think, was kind of the route we took. And so it was great too, because there were about 15 of us from my high school that were cool. part of the starting group. So there were 40 of us that helped to kick off the fraternity. And we quickly recruited another 20. So we were very quickly one of the largest on campus. But it was what was great about starting it is we surrounded each other with people that we felt had the same values and same morals and stuff. So that kind of propelled me to a place where, when I graduated from college, I didn't really know what I was going to do.
We've heard that before on the show.
Yeah. So I had gotten my senior year, I started working for the YMCA in Tampa, and it was kind of the first time I was ever exposed to really deep poverty issues. I was working at the City Central YMCA location in downtown Tampa. And that was the first time I was ever exposed to kids that didn't have father figures in their life, and were on very deep subsidies to even be a member of the Y and that kind of thing. And it really opened my eyes up to, there's this whole population of children out there that are just looking for someone to believe in them and to maybe mentor them and guide them. And so I kind of fell in love with the nonprofit sector, not really thinking that was ever an option for me.
And real quick with that, so we're shooting this from, obviously Mike's in his office in Clearwater, is your headquarters, correct? Mm-hmm. And then I'm in my office in St. Petersburg. Mike's talking about, right in our backyard, our community, is these children that, are yearning for these, different things in life and things like that. We're not in some massive city like New York or Miami or something like that. This is literally right in our backyard. And I'm sure this is cities across the country. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think one of the things we continue to see more and more of are kind of the fatherless, children who, especially young Black boys, who have no male role model in their life. And in my time at Big Brothers Big Sisters, we used to always say that everyone's going to find a mentor. It's whether that mentor is going to help guide them down the right path, or it's going to be the guy standing on the corner that's going to teach them how to sling drugs, right? So, it's a dangerous world out there for children who may not have may not be in a place of having
Have a strong figure in their life.
Exactly. So coming out of college, again, I kind of didn't know what I was going to do. For 2 years, I actually traveled for the college fraternity. It was a paid job. It was a consultant gig where I literally went around to different universities and spent anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks at a time to help start up a brand new chapter. And doing that, what I learned real quick was I was being exposed to a lot of alumni within the fraternity, folks who had very successful careers. And I somehow got involved with doing some fundraising for the fraternity's education foundation. And I found that when you're really passionate about something and you believe in something, it's easy to talk to somebody about them and hope that that passion carries over. And then they do exactly what you hope, and that's to support the organization you're talking about. So that's how I kind of got introduced to the fundraising world. And so after a couple of years of traveling, I decided, hey, I can take this whole nonprofit idea of helping people, and I can kind of partner that with how to raise the resources that nonprofits need to sustain, and put those together and kind of that sales mindset of having a career. And so I ended up moving to Texas after I traveled for the fraternity, and worked for Habitat for Humanity out there for 5 years raising money. And so I was a development director there, and it was a great experience. Obviously, because it's led me down the road to come back to Habitat in a place where now I've been in this role for about 7.5 years.
So when you were with the fraternity originally outside of school, so did you start in recruitment and going to different chapters and things like that? Is that kind of where you started?
Yeah, we would go. So there was myself and another guy I traveled with, and we would go into a college campus and basically meet with the administration, get their support to basically start a new fraternity on campus. We would meet with the alumni base in the area, and a lot of times it was doing research and finding alumni who maybe were not connected with the fraternity anymore, but re-engaging them. So that kind of that re-engagement piece was huge. So we would spend the first couple of weeks doing all that groundwork to build up support. And then we would go on campus and then literally start looking for really guys that were in that top 25% of the campus from a character standpoint, from a school, a academic standpoint, athletes, that kind of thing. And we would literally recruit a group of men to start a new fraternity on campus. So again, it was kind of that idea of you're basically starting a business in a lot of ways, and you're bringing together all kinds of different ideas to make it all work.
And yeah, that's exactly the kind of the direction that I was going with that. Is I think, this is a great story. Kind of, I think a lot of people complain about, and complain's a bad word, but talk about having a lack of experience to be able to get the position that they want. But I think in your situation, if we talk about and what did you start the fraternity or your chapter at USF, your sophomore, junior year, something like that?
Sophomore year, yeah.
So we're talking about from sophomore year, you're learning how to, and we'll talk more in a business sense than actually a fraternal sense, but you're starting a business. So you learned how to do that. Then you learned how to do marketing when you were touring around campus. And then you learned how to do sales when you were trying to get alumni to find the same passion that you were. So within 5 years, you were well experienced. And I'm trying to just tell the audience out there that you can't really make a lot of excuses when you were able to gain all of that experience in 5 years. And I think it is a great thing to say that it's not as much maybe based on what you're doing is if you're not taking advantage of the opportunities that are offered to you, meaning that if you're trying to go down one specific path, maybe you should look at some of the other opportunities in your life, because that specific path you're going down may not be able to offer you everything you need. So,
and Kevin, I think it's really about also, developing the relationships along the way. I can tell you that, I sit in my
how did that affect your journey and things like that, about having these relationships and developing them?
Well, I will tell you that I sit in my current role not necessarily because of my GPA, which was a 2.6, or, I didn't get my master's. I didn't go off to further education, right? I Everything that I feel like I've been successful at in life has been because of the relationships I've built along the way. And that includes even 7.5 years into my role here, when it comes to, my board members and the donors here at the organization. It's all because of relationships. And so I look back to, again, when we were starting the fraternity, and some of those contacts that I've met through our alumni in the Tampa Bay area. I'm still in contact with a lot of those folks 25 years later. And it's because those weren't just superficial on the exterior type relationships. They were truly ones that, you would get advice from folks, and there were accountability partners. Someone who, you're familiar with, Ed Drosty, who's one of the founders of Hooters. He's actually on my advisory board here at Habitat. And I met Ed when I was a sophomore in college. And he was someone who was very straightforward with me on things that I needed to work on, and things, my communication style and all that kind of stuff. And so when someone takes an interest in you at an early age like that, I think it's easy, especially when you're, 20, 21 years old. It's like, I knew everything at that point in life, right? I didn't need advice.
We all did.
So I think there's two ways you can go. One, you can push back and say, hey, I don't need that advice. I know what I'm doing. And you could be kind of cocky about it. Or you could say, wow, like, this person's taking the time to invest in me and tell me, giving me feedback on things I need to improve or things I need to work on. And it's kind of a humbling experience, but I will tell you that that's the kind of stuff that has stuck with me for a long time. And one of the first pieces of advice that Ed gave me was about who I surround myself with. And it was something as basic as the officers we had at the fraternity, so the people in leadership roles, he was like, you want to surround yourself with the smartest people in the room. A's hire A's was something he would always say to me. And so I found myself, getting people involved at the high level of the fraternity that were some of the best leaders we had in the group. I fast forward to now 25 years later here at Habitat. My leadership team, I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room. We have amazing people on our leadership team here that, again, it's surrounding yourself with people who are going to bring stuff to the table and that aren't just going to agree with everything that you have to say.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, not only the advice that a mentor gives you, and I know there's different, kind of philosophies on getting a mentor, having a mentor or not. I think regardless of whatever your philosophies are on that, it's just listening to advice, I think, is the biggest thing. And whether you want to call somebody a mentor or not a mentor, like you said, if they're willing to offer you advice, then you should at least hear them out. And I think a lot of times too, what people miss when they're around people that are successful is it's the advice that they give is amazing, but I like to consider the advice as a value add. I think just hearing these people's stories, seeing how they dress, and I don't mean, fancy clothes and suits and stuff like that. I mean, hey, listen, every time I see that guy, he has a nice pair of dress shoes on, a nice pressed white shirt, a nice pair of jeans or whatever, if it's in a casual setting or a sport jacket, how they talk, how they articulate themselves, how they carry themselves, how they walk into a room, all of those different things I think are inspirational as well, that we don't even really talk about because I think it's deep within the subconscious. So do you agree with that, or did that
100%.
go in the right direction?
100%. But I think that some folks, and I think you and I are very similar in this, we're going to notice those things, right? And we're going to pick up on those things, and we're going to make changes in our behaviors or what have you based on what we see and where we see people are successful. I think other folks have to try a little bit harder. That might not be something that just comes naturally to them. But I do think what is so important is to have people in your life that are mentors. And in some, I have a couple people I consider mentors that are the same age as me. So it doesn't have to be this generational difference. Again, I think a lot of it's probably more looked at in my mind as accountability partners. Somebody who's going to say like, geez, Mike, don't show up with shoes that are falling apart,
Yeah.
those accountability partners are just as important, especially as you move on in life and move throughout your career. You need people that are going to kind of call you out sometimes and hold you accountable.
Wonderful. So, kind of we've gotten into your role now with, Habitat, and kind of gone through your background. So with that, obviously it seemed like you moved up, 12 years may seem like a long time to a lot of people, but in the scheme of things, it's really not that long of a time. I mean, obviously there was working between that, but what advice would you give to somebody that has ambition to keep growing within their company?
Never stop learning.
Okay.
And make it known to leadership within an organization that you want to grow. That it's important for you to find ways to continue to get more educated, to learn the business side of the organization, and maybe even to learn outside of your responsibilities. I think when I was at Big Brothers Big Sisters, I was clearly responsible for the fundraising, the marketing, the communication, and the volunteer recruitment. All of that fell underneath me. But my CEO at the time, invested in me and knew that I had a desire to continue to grow my career. So she started to expose me to different areas of the organization so that I learned how to read a balance sheet. So I learned how to understand a profit and loss statement. So she got me involved in the operations of the organization. And that's not something that I get excited about, but it's something that I realized that if I wanted to move my career, I would have to learn those things. On the flip side, she also got me involved in the programmatic aspect of the organization and things I needed to learn about the organization, and really kind of groomed me to kind of continue to advance my career. So I think it's important that her and I had an understanding that it was important for me to continue to advance and continue to learn. And when I say advance, that doesn't mean like I want a new job title or I need a pay increase all the time. For me, it was more about like, how do I feel like I'm constantly moving and constantly advancing my knowledge base and my sphere of influence. I think a good leader will invest in people who want to do that.
So that's interesting to put it that way. So when you're at an organization where you want to move up, it's a two-way street, meaning that obviously your street is that you want to keep going in, an upward direction, or an outward direction rather, but that you're also at an organization that recognizes that and is willing to foster that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's okay if you're in a place where you have a supervisor or a boss or a leader who's not necessarily vulnerable in that space. I think that's also when it's time to look. When people are doing job interviews, I think it's important that you're interviewing the employer just as much as they're interviewing you. It's a great market right now for folks to be looking for a new opportunity. We know that we're kind of going through this whole thing that they're calling the Great Resignation, where 40% of the workforce will leave their current employer by the end of the calendar year. And they're leaving because they're looking for those opportunities. They want to grow. They want more stability. They want more investment in them as an employee. And so, I think that's one of the things we really try to do here at Habitat is every year we sit down with our employees on an annual basis and talk about what's this next 12 months look for you. Where do you want the organization to spend some time on you? Is that some continued education? Is that some training? Is that some shadowing? And we try to come up with a development plan for each individual employee. And I'm not saying we do everything right here, but I would say that if someone is working in an environment where their employer is not willing to do that on an annual basis with them and look for ways to invest in them, then they're probably not in the right place.
Got it. So yeah, it's an investment on both ends. And, I think it's important too, and I'm sure you can shed some light on this, because I think a lot of people, and I can't speak obviously for the audience, but when they hear that they're supposed to be interviewing for the employer or interviewing the employer, they come up with these canned questions rather than really asking direct, related questions to the position. So,
Yeah.
I don't know your thoughts on that, but I definitely wanted to put that out there. Meaning, what, some ridiculous open-ended question like, when should I expect to really grow here?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's funny. I just went through a pretty intense interview process for an executive level position here at Habitat, and we had some great candidates. Actually, I was blown away with the quality of candidates we had. I love when someone puts me on a spot in an interview, and asks me very direct questions that are helping them to better understand the culture. I think questions around culture are key right now. The world has changed. The world continues to change and shift. And so I think if someone's in an interview and they're not asking about the culture and how new employees fit into that culture and what they're, what an employer looks for in an employee from a culture standpoint, again, you're probably not asking the right questions. So, and again, if you're interviewing with someone and they're put off by a question that you ask, then again, that's, to me, that kind of raises a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, I want to talk about Habitat for Humanity, obviously.
Yeah.
and I say this with all due respect, because I think I'm probably speaking for a larger population, but before I learned about it and kind of did some reading and got involved, I thought you guys gave away free houses. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, this is awesome that, we'll support people in the community, but like these individuals go through a very strenuous process class-wise and are making contributions as well to these homes. So tell us kind of a little bit about Habitat and that kind of process and what you guys do.
Yeah, and Kevin, you're right. That's our biggest misconception, is that we build homes and give them away. And it couldn't be, any further from the truth. So the folks that we partner with at Habitat are, they're hardworking community members. They have to hold steady employment, but they would be what you would consider the working poor. So they're making more money than someone who would qualify for government assistance, but they don't make enough to qualify for a traditional home loan. And so they're stuck somewhere in between there, typically in a place where they're spending 40, 50, 60% of their monthly income on rent. And so they come to Habitat looking for an opportunity to own their own home. We call the Habitat program a hand up, not a handout, because everything that they get, they're working hard for. So a homeowner candidate applies for our program. It's all based on their income, their employment, their willingness to partner with Habitat. And what I mean by that is they have to fill some requirements in the program, and then their ability to pay a mortgage. And so if they check all those boxes, we can get them into the program. And so they complete, once they're in the program, they complete over 20 homebuyer education classes. And those classes are geared at making them more self-sufficient for the future. About 8 of them are focused around the financial aspect of owning their own home. So we teach them how to save, how to build a budget, how to decorate on a tiny, smaller budget. In addition to the classes, they put in 350 to 450 sweat equity hours. And so they work on Habitat homes. They help swing a hammer, and they also help construct their own home. So they're doing things like landscaping and painting, installing cabinets, installing baseboards, doors, windows, all that kind of stuff. So they're learning the basics of home maintenance and repair. And then at the end of the program, we sell them the home. So it's not free. We sell them the home. The difference between you and I and them is that they're getting a 0 interest mortgage. Okay. So that 0 interest mortgage is what guarantees the affordability of the home. And so, as an example, on a $200,000 Habitat home, they're going to pay probably around $850 a month for their principal, their insurance, and their taxes. Okay. And so we're getting them from a place where they're probably spending $1,400 a month to a place where it's more affordable. They're building equity and they're building generational wealth through home ownership.
So, kind of to sum this up, these partners are spending probably well over 500 hours to get into this home.
Yep.
They're probably significantly more educated than the average first-time home buyer by the time they get into this.
Oh,
And
yeah.
on top of that, they are paying the full value for the home. The only difference is they're not paying interest like you or I would pay.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
So pretty much the complete opposite of a free home, if not way, way, way more difficult and time consuming.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned the education. I think that's the key, right? I mean, um, we've built 705 homes in our community, right? And so out of those 705 homes, we've had 6 foreclosures in our history. And so we really say that that success rate is because of the education. And that's really what sets the whole program apart. I mean, we're providing them with education on how to be a good neighbor, how to get involved civically in your community, how to engage in your community, how to budget and save for your future. We see folks that come into our program with nothing in the bank, right? They haven't saved a dollar. They probably have some debt issues, and we work through that with them. And then by the time they're done with our program 12 months later and moving into their new home, they have $15,000 saved in the bank because we're teaching them how to cut things out and not to spend ridiculously. And that's something, honestly, that we can all do. Sometimes I'll sit through our budgeting workshop and afterwards I walk away thinking, gosh, I really didn't need to go through that Starbucks drive-through. And if I don't go through that Starbucks drive-through and I multiply that out over 100 days a year that I do, man, I can save some serious money, so it's little things like that that make a huge difference.
That's why I can't watch Dave Ramsey every time I feel
Yeah.
listen to Dave Ramsey for like one interview. I'm like, man, I so many regrets coming so quick. So, and is that 12, you mentioned the 12 months. Is that how long they have to complete the program? Is there a time limit to complete it?
It's a 2-year time limit. We see the average family gets through in about 12 to 15 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So now, and then is there different, do you have to complete one class to get on to the other? Like, meaning like, if you don't go to class 2, hey, you can't move on to class 3 until you go to class 2.
From the budgeting standpoint, yeah, there's kind of an order that they take the classes. The other ones are, offered on a regular basis, quarterly. And so, it's as long as they satisfy all 20 classes by the time they're finishing the program, then they've met their requirement. And
then you have what are called the Restore stores too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that. So that's actually available to anybody in any community, correct?
Yeah. So we have in our service area, which is Pinellas County and the western side of Pasco, we have 3 stores. So we have one in Clearwater, one in Palm Harbor, and we're opening a brand new one in Newport Richey. And so the idea behind the Restore is it's really a revenue generator for Habitat. And so 100% of the proceeds from the stores go back into building homes. And our Restores generate about $1.5 million a year for our program. And what it is it's gently used and brand new building supplies, building materials, home goods, pretty much anything that you can associate with the house. You can find at the Restore. So we have everything from couches and cabinets to sinks, tubs, lumber. You name it, you can find it there. So I always like to say that if you're doing some home repair work around the house, or you're looking for some stuff for the house for decorations, before you go and spend retail, swing by the Restore, because you never know what you'll find, and it all goes towards a good cause.
Wonderful. So clearly you have a lot of responsibilities, to say the least. So how would you describe your typical day? I mean, what does it look like? I mean, I would imagine it's ever changing and never ending, but
but I think that's what I love so much about my job, is that I never have the same day twice. Okay. So every day is different. Some days I'm, sitting here on a podcast with you, and others I'm, out in the community meeting with donors. I'm swinging by our job sites and checking in on our staff. I'm dealing with administrative things. In some cases, I'm dealing with, the fundraising aspect of what we do. So, every day is different for me. But again, that's what kind of keeps it exciting. And, after 7.5 years, every day when I show up to work, and that's what I really love about my job, is that I never feel like I'm, oh gosh, another day at the office. Like, I truly pull in every day excited to be here.
It's great. That's great. So with that and every day being different and obviously busy, how do you have that work-life balance? Or and I hate that word so much because
I
it's, if
know.
you love what you do, then it's, people
Yeah.
almost judge you for it. But how do you
Yeah.
kind of balance that personal time and be able to do what you want to do outside of the office? Yeah.
I think a lot of it, I mentioned accountability partners, right? So I think that's part of it. I also realize in my role that I'm on all the time, right? So I might go to, Friday night as an example. I'm going to a community event in Clearwater for the chamber, and I see that as it's downtime because I get to hang out with friends and have a couple beers. But at the same time, I also know that I'm kind of hobnobbing with people in the community. So, I think for me, I recharge in small groups and by myself. So it's funny because a lot of people think that I'm a very extroverted person, and I am, but at the same time I recharge by myself. So on the weekends and stuff, it's not uncommon for me to spend a day alone, maybe going to do a kayak ride or going for a walk over the bridge, things that just give me the opportunity to kind of recharge a little bit.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, I think a lot of people, and I think that's great that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people, try to say that downtime is involved in hanging out with other people,
Yeah.
which, I almost think, and I can identify with that with myself. I hope my wife doesn't see this episode, but, I like that time of going, and I can recall years ago, and I do it every so often. If, obviously if my wife has a girls' night out, but I love going to dinner by myself and sitting
Yeah.
at the bar and just not talking to
Yeah.
anybody and watching TV and getting a nice meal. And it's one of my favorite things. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, and I think you need that downtime, no matter, relationships or how many friends you have or business acquaintances or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's important to schedule that me time, with just doing some light activity or just hanging out and being with yourself. So
Yeah. 100%. I agree with you.
so tell me about, kind of wrapping up here. Tell me about
Yep.
some goals and some upcoming things for Habitat.
Yeah, so we're busy, right? So we will build 65 homes this year in Pinellas and West Pasco counties, and so for us, really um, kind of re-engaging the community around helping us to build those homes is a big goal for us. The pandemic, although the pandemic was very tough, we still built a record number of homes last year, which was phenomenal, and we'll do the same again this year. So re-engaging the community to come help swing a hammer with us is a big goal. We're also going to be opening that new store up in Newport Richey at the end of 2021. So that's big for us. We're also opening an education center for the homeowner candidates that go through our program. So we have some space in our Clearwater Restore that we've built out with some state-of-the-art conference rooms and breakout rooms, which will be a location for us to do all the classes with our homeowner candidates. So a lot of busy things on the radar. For the community, we'd love to have them come out, swing a hammer. They can always support us financially. They can always shop at the Restore. There's many opportunities to get involved with Habitat.
And how would someone start or be able to go and qualify for a Habitat home? What is that? Is there an application process online?
Yeah, the best thing to do is to go to our website, habitatpwp.org. And on the website, it walks you through step by step what that process looks like.
And I'm going to have all those links in the bio below, so don't you guys have to worry about rewinding this video back and forth. So, and getting involved in volunteering, I'm sure you could go through the same website.
Everything that I mentioned, yeah, you can get on our website. So
wonderful. So we will have those in the link below. Mike, I imagine if anybody wants to find you, they can find you again through the website.
Yeah.
With questions or anything like that.
I'm pretty easy to find. They can find me on LinkedIn. I don't hide too often.
So we'll link Mike's LinkedIn below. So again, I can't thank you enough for the wonderful things that you're doing for the community. I want to put it out there that, somebody that's getting a Habitat for Humanity home is well qualified. And when they come to your community, make sure you welcome them with open arms and probably ask them a couple of questions, because they probably are going to know a few more things rather than you do. So thank you again. Get involved. If it's not, Habitat, get involved with another local community organization. I love how this podcast is growing, where we're supporting the areas that we're in. And this is another great opportunity to do that. So thank you so much, Mike, for your time, and any parting words.
No, thank you, Kevin. Really, really appreciate the opportunity to chat. I love talking about Habitat, and no, thank you for everything you do. And I second your comment about getting involved with the community. There's many great organizations out there that need support, and so find one to get plugged into.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for watching. As these young YouTubers say, make sure you smash that like button, that thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. And thanks so much, Mike. Stay well.
Awesome. You too.